Okay. I guess it's my turn to do the introduction.
All right.
So, welcome to the 55th meeting of the Junto Club. I'm Matthew, joined here by Shu and Michael. This Junto Club podcast kind of takes over or takes after the Junto Club that Benjamin Franklin founded when he was a young man. It was a club for mutual discussion and improvement where he discussed business, politics, science, philosophy, and the interesting topics of the day as a way to sort of learn more about the world and himself and improve themselves. So, we're basically trying to imitate that just in a not quite as impressive way. So we come in with topics, and today that's going to be game theory, specifically the classic prisoner's dilemma. So I'm not going to be talking about game theory as a whole, but really narrow down on one interesting part of it. Uh, but before we get into that, Shu generally brings us a quote to think about. So Shu, start us off.
All right. Today's quote is, quote, when negotiating, don't aim for a bigger piece of the pie. Aim to create a bigger pie, end quote, by Kevin Kelly. Uh, actually, when I picked this quote, I actually did not have the game theory topic in mind. So, but then right now, when I realize, oh, this game theory topic and this quote seem to be very appropriate in
I
hindsight, even though
I
I did not pick it
I was gonna
for that
ask, I'm like, did
reason.
you see what I was gonna talk about and then like put that down? It's very appropriate.
No, yeah.
I'll jump in
Mm.
first, since I'll be the one talking today. Just gonna let Mike sit silent for most of the podcast.
Very good.
I mean, I think there's a pretty straightforward interpretation, right? It's basically just if you can cooperate to benefit you both, that's going to work better than just trying to sort of win in
Hmm.
terms of like taking more than what the other person has. Yeah, and I think, I mean, you could take this and try a literal approach, like try to create an actual situation where you both benefit. But I think this, from a negotiating standpoint, I think it's more about how you frame it, right? Like if you straight up say like, "Hey, I want this that you have, like give me more," you're gonna create, a combative stance and framework in the person you're negotiating with. So regardless of what the truth of it is, try to frame things as you're both winning as a way to more likely get people to agree to what you want, right? You
Hmm.
always, if you're negotiating, the first thing you should do is try to figure out what the other person wants or have them tell you if it's an honest, straightforward negotiation and see if it's possible, to give them that, right? Because then you can
Hmm.
work from there.
Yes.
Yes.
No, no, no. Um, yeah, I mean, I was thinking of sort of, yeah, a comparative advantage type situation. So, like,
Mm,
if you're thinking about, like, when two people, like, I mean, I guess a very simple example would be two people are producing, like, different types of goods. And, and, like, I guess in the negotiation, it would be like, you know, how much one gives the other. Like, I guess if they both specialize in some way, they can both come out ahead if it were rather than working in isolation. So that's seeing, I guess, a larger pie versus just like a finite set amount of goods where you're trying to take more and more of the pie. So it's like
Hmm.
it's not just one person, like they have a set thing that they can create and you've got to divide that in a certain way. It's sort of two people coming together to create a larger pie and they both benefit in different ways. Or ideally that's what a negotiation would be, I guess. Like it's not one bringing a finite thing that the other can just take from. It's two people bringing what they both are good at and
mhm.
they both benefit in some way.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, both. I think a lot of any underlying assumption is then negotiation, and it's always you try to win. It's almost like you try to win over the other person, right? And that's the wrong mindset to get into. Yeah. I
Mhm.
think this is just caution that instead of come up with a win-win solution for both, right? So both win at the same time, right?
Mhm.
Uh, but I think actually this one made me think about the wealth like tax actually, like taxing the rich. I'm not sure if this makes sense. Like to me, just thinking like it sounds to me like tech when like even in the United States, a lot of people, the Democrats are just in Texas system. Right? The assumption is that taxing the rich, like maybe as if you get over a certain like amount of earning, then you should tax them more, right? Uh, that sounds to me is almost like try to get a piece. The mindset is to try to get a bigger piece of the pie instead of letting rich maybe keep the money and then they may invest more and then create a bigger pie, right? And I mean, what would you think? What's your thoughts on that one?
It's a complicated topic,
Mm,
because I mean, I'm not really a wealth tax person just because I think it as like a tax approach to taxing, it's impractical.
hmm
But in the general concept, taxing the rich more is good. I mean, we have right now a progressive tax system, right? Wealthy
hmm
people do pay more taxes unless they're really good at tax evasion, but that's illegal and we try to stop them. So, but there's a balance, right? Because yes, I agree. You don't want to just like take everything. I think unlike some people, I think rich people generally are wealthy because they're doing something productive and they're
hmm
benefiting society. But on the flip side, they're only able to do that because of the society we built, right? Like
hmm
they also rely on the infrastructure, the education of the masses, police and firemen and all those things. And if we tax them less, we'd have to tax other people more, or we'd have to start reducing services and the stuff that funds society. So there's a balance, right? There is some optimum
mm
where, for them, even ignoring everyone else, there's some optimum where like by making society work as well as possible, but they also can keep the majority of their wealth, they come out the farthest ahead. I It's kind of like, would you rather, this is kind of stretching it, but it's like you don't want to be the rich warlord of a super poor country, right? You're literally less wealthy than, Bill Gates or Jeff
hmm
Bezos, right? Like even though they're not, you know, sort of in this supreme position in the country, they became like ridiculously wealthy, right? So
hmm
it's like many things, there's a balance to it.
Very true. All right. Should we go into the mini topics?
Yeah, we got two mini topics related to the election that I think are both pretty hot. Do y'all want to
hmm
go recent first or chronological order?
Probably what you're most excited about. I mean,
What?
not what you're excited, what you're most interested in talking about.
All right, Mike, you pick.
I'm not even looking at the document, but I'm guessing it's the debate and the attempted assassination.
You nailed
Oh,
it.
really? Well,
That's exactly it.
actually the order is the Trump assassination and then the debate.
Well,
Okay.
Mike's gonna pick the order.
hmm But
Uh,
depends how it goes. This one might not go into the final edit, but I also have a different mini topic we can go through. So we'll see how this goes.
Okay.
Mhm.
okay. Well, should we be controversial here, Shu, and say the main part of each that we should take away from all of this is they both show what the crooked lying media says, or the
Sure.
what a crooked lying media we have is.
Our goal here is to be controversial. So there's no
Yeah,
such as saying too controversial.
yeah. No, I mean honestly, I probably would start with the like I guess start maybe a little slower and end on the high note or end on the most recent, most like newsworthy thing.
Uh-huh.
So I guess start with the debate.
Mm.
Okay. I'll I'll
Now,
I'll I'll jump in then. Did y'all
can
watch it at all?
I
can I
actually
overrule
did.
that one?
Oh, you want to start with the assassination?
Yes.
Oh, okay. That's fine.
All right,
Go
that's
shoot.
fine. All right, go.
Well, unless you guys really want to talk about the debate first.
No. Yeah, that's fine. I didn't necessarily have a strong preference. So
Okay. All right. I have strong preference on this assassination
okay,
attempt. Mhm.
okay.
Bold
What?
statement. What's your preference?
Yeah.
Are you pro or against assassination show?
No, I think it's stupid. Yeah. I mean, Trump is gonna win anyway. It was at 90%, 95%, and now it's 100%.
All right. I guess
Uh,
for context, because someone could be listening to this later, this is
mhm.
roughly 24 hours after Trump got shot in the
Yeah.
ear, and
Mm-hmm.
one person at his rally behind him died,
Mm-hmm.
and the
Mhm.
shooter who was on a roof relatively close
Mm-hmm.
was killed in action, or killed by the Secret Service to stop them. So those are the events that are still quite recent.
Yeah. So what's the one detail that we know? Because I actually don't know anything. I only know that he got shot, and and then the shooter got killed. Apparently, the shooter is a Republican. Is that true?
That's what I saw. I saw he's a
I
registered
mean, he was a
Republican.
registered Republican, but maybe there's some
Yeah.
other things that maybe
Yeah.
he yeah.
No, I
Yeah.
was gonna say there's lots of people arguing like, oh, he could have registered Republican to vote in Republican primaries and da 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 da.
Oh,
So
okay, that makes
Yeah.
sense. Yeah.
I've seen this yeah, I've seen that, and then other people are like he didn't even vote in the primaries apparently, which the guy was 20 years old is pretty normal. Most
Hmm.
young people don't vote a lot anyway, especially not for like primaries. Yeah, I don't think anyone knows yet. He was wearing a shirt that was like a YouTube channel, but it was some like gun YouTube channel.
Hmm.
So I don't know. So people, have kind of said like at a loose profile, it seems like he could be like a, relatively generic like doesn't seem like there's anything that makes him look left wing so far.
Hmm.
So is this guy just like was really mentally unstable or what? Or just,
Mm,
you know, no one has found like a manifesto yet that says like this is why I'm going to try to kill Trump.
mm.
Yeah.
Mike, you got any thoughts?
yeah, no, I mean it's interesting. I mean I mean I don't know. Like I've read sort of the arguments on both sides that yeah, like I mean the left is very much trying to play I'll say like they're trying to say all the right things in this moment and
Hmm.
basically like very much just like political violence is never okay and they're very defensive at suggest like because the right is of course going very hard like for the last 8 years who called Trump Hitler and now what do you expect someone's going to lash out thinking they're killing Hitler and the
Mm,
left is of course very defensive of that. I mean I can see like I mean tend to I tend to be about this sort of every way. Like when the left was basically saying like Trump caused January 6th, like, Trump is a traitor, da 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 da. I'm sort of like the people who stormed the Capitol, like I put any shit that was done, I put the blame on them. Like I tend to be like a very like
mm,
you should be able to have ideas out there and if people are susceptible like we live in a world with a lot of very stupid people and like those people need to be responsible for their own actions like they need to be able to hear ideas and not just like just go with them or like I don't sort of I have a hard time believing anyway that people like are just puppets with pulled by strings. So I mean, this guy, regardless of what he had heard, regardless of whether he's Republican or Democrat, I think Matt sort of hit the nail on the head. He, like, to me, he's just like incredibly mentally ill and,
hmm.
basically probably isolated and wanted to make a name for himself in some fashion, whether that was, whether he was truly thinking he was killing Hitler or, he, I don't know, or, he thought by doing this, he'd save the Republican Party somehow, or I don't know.
Or if it's a false flag and he's like, I'm going to turn Trump into a martyr
Yeah, well,
or,
that's yeah,
you know,
right. Well, I mean, that's the more ridiculous because a lot of times the Democrats will accuse the Republicans of more being conspiracy theory people. And
yeah.
like this was a full, like the people on the left were like, I bet it's staged. And it's like, you don't stage a shooting by actually shooting the guy in the ear. No one is that good a shot. Like,
Yeah, no. If it was the martyr that he was, even if he was trying to make Trump a martyr, which is an incredibly unlikely event, he was really trying to shoot him in the head, right? Like he was like,
Yeah.
I will kill him to make him a martyr, not I'm gonna graze his ear.
Yeah. No, because I mean, because it's crazy to me that I feel like I still like still see people saying it, and it's like someone died. Like, it's like they're not gonna kill a supporter. Like, like if they're trying, like if this was a false flag or whatever, it would have absolutely been, they would have just caught the guy. Like he may have gotten
Hmm.
off, like, like he may have put off some blanks or like I don't know. I mean, but he definitely would not have killed a supporter and taken Trump's ear off. So
Mm, yeah.
so yeah. So I mean, but it's obviously a big story because it shows how, like, I do feel like it shows how the country's at a little bit of a boiling point here. Like,
Hmm.
I mean,
Mhm.
there is obvious tension on both sides that
Yeah.
is doesn't make
That's
sense to me.
yeah. I know a lot of Democrats just saying. I mean, a lot of on the left just probably extreme left just saying it's staged. But one thing I think I guess I think I hear some people is worried about like this. Just imagine the other alternative, right? If he got killed, he could be uh he just I think it's gonna be very, I mean, super bad for the country, right? Potentially could, could have a civil war, right? Because Trump supporters are passionate, Just look at what happened January 6th or 6, like, storm Capitol. Like,
Mhm.
if he got had died, like, I cannot imagine what they gonna do, right? What they probably gonna burn something. What are they gonna storm, right? Not
Yeah.
just the Capitol, right?
Like
Yeah.
on its own, it was still like a very bad event, but it was super close to being like
Yeah,
potentially way more inflammatory, right? Like
catastrophic. Yeah,
2 inches from Trump dying
yeah.
easily.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I mean, it's kind of weird, but the fact that he was like, you know, apparently like a gun-loving white guy Republican, sort of, it's
Yeah.
not like it doesn't make it not a big deal, but it sort of like undermines a little bit of like the what could have been like a much stronger like response to like the other side is trying to, like they're
Mm-hmm.
literally trying to kill us now, so we're gonna like fight back and
Exactly.
instigated this like thing. But now it's kind of like, well, he that seems like he's more, it doesn't fit into this sort of like us versus them thing exactly. So it's sort of like, is it just one crazy person, not the start of the Civil War 2.0? So
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, you know, t political tensions are high, as Mike
Mm-hmm.
has acutely stated. We have historically a regular cadence of very mentally ill people doing things with guns. You know, a lot of the times they walk into a school for some reason, and that's their
Mm-hmm.
chosen, path. But it's not, I guess, in hindsight, it's not that surprising that one of these mentally ill people might get like taken in by like the media and political frenzy and like focus that very destructive energy towards, politics instead of random school children. So,
Mm-hmm. All right. So here's a conspiracy theory that I just thought of.
okay.
Actually, I heard Trump's interview on a podcast called All In Podcast. Actually, it's one of very popular podcasts now. They started during the pandemic too, but it's just basically a bunch of VC rich guys. And they talk about technology and politics, so they're really into politics too. So anyway, so actually Trump came on and have a very long conversation, almost like 45 minutes or hour, and he seems very intelligent. I know the way he talked about it. I said, oh yeah, he's super sharp during the he was like making jokes, connection between stuff like that. And one thing he talked about that he say during the he's going to actually release the JFK files from uh uh unseal the JFK files if he become a president again.
Mhm.
And he did say that in there, because a lot of I think Kennedy family actually have been saying that actually CIA maybe might have been involved during the John F. Kennedy JFK's assassination. So so now I think now Trump is getting shot. Is there a connection?
Is there a connection?
Because maybe they don't want him to release the file. So yeah. Anyway, just a conspiracy theory. based on what he was talking about recently. Right?
Maybe. It's
Yeah.
funny, I saw that he talked about that, and all that crossed my mind was like, weren't you already president? If you wanted to do that, why didn't you? You know?
Oh, I think it's the reason. I think it's multiple. I think finally, like CIA is starting to release some of the files or something. Maybe I think some of the sentiment are getting some of I think the restriction or I don't know getting loose or something. Or maybe he just wasn't focused on that during his first administration. But
Yeah.
yeah. It based on what people want, right? If people want them to be released, and then president gonna, gonna be gonna latch onto that, right? So,
Hmm.
hmm
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I guess I'd believe the conspiracy more depending on what's in there. So
yeah,
maybe
sounds
he'll
good.
win and release them. I mean, I just have trouble believing, I don't know. I
Really,
just, people can't do basic things. I just have trouble believing any like highly complicated conspiracy.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
the fallacy of believing like there must be super confident people in control, and it's not
Yes.
just the world, it's not just a bunch of chaos and idiots doing random shit.
Yes.
or just
Chaos and idiots.
or just
Is
sometimes the simplest explanation is the right reason, the explanation, right? Instead of coming out with the complex conspiracy theories.
yes,
Mm.
Occam's razor.
Yeah. Anyway, talking about him being very sharp on oil, talk about like our conversation against uh we can talk about Biden's performance on the debate that he been.
Oh,
Oh man,
I mean,
yeah.
what a
yeah,
transition.
yeah. I mean, I never heard him like for talking like even Owen also invited the podcast actually invited Biden as well, but he's not coming on, right? Actually, there's other presidential like candidates like I think John Dean or Jean whatever Dean and then the other candidate came on like talked for like hour like so I just never heard like Biden had talked an hour just having conversation and stuff like that. So that's how people staying sharp. So at least my takeaway is that like Trump was still like very mentally fit and it based on that interview. So
Mm,
anyway, but actually I did not watch the debate. Did you guys watch that?
I did. I saw
You did?
most of it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So is
I
it true
watched
that
most of it.
is your immediate assessment of Biden's uh mental fitness is that a appropriate concern, legit concern?
It was rough. Okay. It was
Okay.
definitely rough. He did get a little better. Like it was really rough the first like 15, 20 minutes. And I think he sort of, I guess, warmed up to it a little bit.
Hmm.
But even then it definitely wasn't great. And like the start was pretty rough. Um, yeah, I
Mm.
think I mean, if y'all follow like Democratic Party stuff, this is kind of formed a schism in the Democratic Party. And
Yeah.
there's
Hmm.
two sides. There's one group that's like it doesn't matter, Biden's gonna be the nominee, it's too late. We can't change. Like we got to focus on winning the election because that's what's important. And it's like, well, even if Biden's health does decline, it's really more about the administration and stuff. It's still like we'll be putting in the right people. We'll still be get things done,
Hmm.
blah, blah, blah. And then the other side's like, you know, has Biden's team been hiding the fact that he's starting to like decline recently? Is it getting a lot worse? Is this going to cost us the election? That's so important. We haven't had the convention yet. It's late in the game, but it's not too late to try to like switch nominees. Biden should preserve his
Hmm.
legacy by standing down and not potentially losing the election because he sort of held on to power, but that, his health failed him and then it caused him to
Hmm.
lose in a, RGB like move. So
RGB?
RBG, Ruth Bader Ginsburg,
Yeah, what about her?
she was the
Yeah, I know she was a Supreme Court justice, but she died, passed away, right? But
right, but
what was she?
she didn't retire even though she had some health complications when Obama was president.
Hmm.
And then Trump won and got to replace her seat with
Mhm.
like a much younger conservative justice. So a
hmm
lot of people um weren't happy. They're basically like you were already like you had been on the court for a long time,
mm
you're very old, you were having health problems, like you could have just retired gracefully.
mm
But like you held on to power assumingly for like your personal ego, and then that like has if you're a
Mm.
Democrat, you view that a lot of harm ended up being done because it, lost her the seat.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah. And honestly, I've read people on both sides, and I'm not sure. I'm absolutely not sure on the schism who's the right call.
What do you mean? Like whether Biden should step down? I
Yeah,
mean, should
like,
change.
is it too late? Like, it seems like both strategies seem to have a lot of risk. If you would have, I mean, like a year ago, even like 6 months ago, I was like, I'm not saying Biden was definitely going to win, but I'm like, I think he's got a comfortable advantage. Incumbents usually have an advantage. The economy is stable and doing well. Like an incumbent with a good economy, I'm like, chaos aside, like he has like a nice chance to win. Well, we are
Mm.
now here in the chaos that's been happening. You know, Biden may or may not be like in rapid health decline.
Uh-huh.
Trump just almost got assassinated. Things are changing fast, and my confidence in a Biden win is going down significantly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you, Mike? You said you saw the debate too?
Yeah, 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 I
You watched
saw
it?
the debate. I mean, I think Matt's
What's
characterization is,
what's your professional medical assessment?
yeah, that's right. Yes, my
You do have a
professional.
doctor's degree, remember?
That's right. Yes, yes, my professional, my non-professional MD and my professional PhD. No, I mean, I think he's 80, whatever, 83. What is he now?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, he's, I mean, that was not a good performance. And I
Mm.
mean, I think, I mean, I do think he's being carefully controlled. And
Mm.
I definitely think, I mean, there were questions raised about his health and fitness like 4 years ago. And I think 4 years at this age can make a substantial, 4 months at this age can make a pretty substantial difference. So,
Mm.
I mean, I, uh, I tend to agree with Matt that, it's not. I think that, like, I mean, even more so than the assassination attempt. I mean, I think that's a big thing. But I mean, that debate has really caused a problem for Biden, I think, in the general election, because there are a lot of people who are going to be like, if he had, I don't think it would have caused nearly as big a deal, but I think most people who are Democrats don't want Kamala.
Mm.
And I think a lot of people are feeling after the debate, it's almost an inevitability that they're getting Kamala if he wins.
Mm. Yeah.
So, so if that's what happens, that's what happens. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm
It's
in.
okay. Mayor Pete can still be the nominee.
Yeah. Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't heard of Buttigieg as a replacement, though. I keep hearing Gavin
Yeah.
Newsom, which, and I mean, California is not doing well in a lot of ways. So, I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, we rather
Mm-hmm.
than arguing about politics, we need more people to get MDs and PhDs, so we have enough doctors to actually help people.
Mm.
Ugh.
Wait, you're saying politicians are not helping people?
I mean, they're few and far between. So,
Yeah. So I think I guess since I did not watch the performance, at least I cannot really judge Biden's mental fitness, but I do want to maybe he can come do some kind of like long form conversation with for podcast or something like that, right? So people can actually listen, right?
Oh,
And
you're gonna invite him on for our next one?
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. So it's an open conversation for President Biden to come on the Junto podcast. Junto. But so we can ask him some tough questions. But anyway, I would say I think one thing I would say I don't think like restricting age is a criteria. Should I don't think for me I don't think age is a concern. Main concern is like like Warren Buffett, right? He's like 90 something. He's still going and he's still making good decisions. And then every year he's sitting in front of camera talking like what for 6 7 hours. Those are the kind of knows if he since he was doing that, he's fit, right? So Biden, I
Mhm.
think, just need to do more of those instead of being maybe he just campaign just being super controlled. Maybe just let him loose or something,
Mhm.
let people see. Yeah, I don't know. And the other thing is I think I had 2 points to make. Oh, yeah. And the second point, I would say, as a country, it doesn't really matter actually, like whether who became the president. Even if Biden is mentally unfit, he's doing he's doing a solid job. No war has been breaking out on something. Anything is stable right now, right? So even if he became a president again, and then he decline, as you say, he had people around him that team might be able. Even Kamala took over, that's be okay too. And even Trump became a president, that's fine too. Because I feel like United States have a pretty good framework that is resilient to a little bit of like chaos like that in one executive branch, right? So yeah, I think there are a lot of big concerns, like who and is I think the system and it's the United States system. I feel like is resilient to whoever going to be the president, right?
Hmm.
Uh, and then the third point, I guess, would be like I the U.S. need to come up with need really find a way to push better candidates instead of just just two 80 years olds, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah,
that's what everyone says.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
going back to, I feel like the Democratic Party has some potential candidates too, but going back to my original point is, I think most people are kind of like, okay, he's the incumbent, right?
Mm-hmm.
The last like running against your incumbent has rarely happened, and I believe when it has happened, it's been bad, like it's hurt. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I think it's kind of like it makes sense as a default, and then the people who would have been in the know to say maybe this isn't a good idea are Joe Biden and the people very close to him, right? Could have been the ones to say, wait, like if your health is actually getting bad, maybe this isn't a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you mentioned, like things like Warren Buffett going on for like talking for hours and stuff. Like, yeah, like obviously it makes it a risk, but being old alone doesn't make you, feeble or incapable. But
Yeah,
he hasn't been doing those things, right? Since the debate, that's been one of the things people are bringing up. It's like, okay, if that was just a bad night, could you
yeah.
do like go on some shows, go do some
Mm-hmm.
things, and kind of demonstrate? And it's like, and he hasn't. And then people that's continue
Exactly.
to stretch concerns that like he might like that might be his normal state,
Mm-hmm.
not like a one-off anomaly. He wasn't feeling good or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
All right. Anyway, we'll see what happens. Yeah. Due to the recent assassination attempt of Trump, as I say, I'm ready for Trump 2024. I think he's probably gonna be the president. Even just he
Ah,
might even get some sympathy votes, right? So, uh,
No.
yeah.
Well,
Yeah. So going back to that, actually, just one last before we leave politics, game theories. I think Mike, in the beginning you mentioned about media being crazy, like whatever, like I think we did not touch on that. Well, what do you mean by that?
well, no, I think there's been, I mean, so leading up to and following the debate, there was a
Oh
big,
no, I think we're talking about an assassination, right?
well, yeah, or
Earlier,
the well, so okay. Yeah,
like,
well, the
in the beginning,
assassination
right
was a
before we
very,
talk about an assassination attempt, you were talking about, you were saying you were just make a comment about the media being crazy
well,
about
yeah,
like,
I guess, yeah, well, my comment was that, like, I think the media has been, like, or the mainstream media has come
yeah,
under fire for both of these, right?
mm,
For both the debate and the assassination attempt. Because if you, like, I didn't realize Trump got shot for
mm,
about an hour and a half after it happened
mm,
because the push notifications that came to my phone
mm,
said, like, Trump rally interrupted with loud noises or something to that effect. Like,
mm,
it was like basically like, sounds of gunshots, like, or like loud pop sounding of gunshots, like at Trump rally. Like, it was very like vague for like well over an hour that there was
mm,
an assassination attempt. And even some places it really took to today to sort of use the word like a serious assassination attempt of Trump.
mm,
So I think a lot of people, certainly on the right, were like, how much more biased could the media be?
mm,
Then like they sort of are immediately undermined, as you say, like they don't want sympathy for Trump. This is very much just I mean, it's sort of like uh what's the word I want to use here? Sort of like it's sort of smoothing over what otherwise maybe like grab people's attention and draw them in, and be
Hmm.
like, oh, and when it came to the debate with Biden, like a lot of people following the debate were saying like this is something that has been raised like for the last 4 to 6 years, like Biden's mental health and
Yeah.
his strength and ability to do the job. This is something that's been coming up again and again and again, and basically it was laughed off as a conspiracy theory.
Mm.
So, I guess a lot of people on the right are like, basically the mainstream media will say, like, oh, these are conspiracies. And, now here we are, we're a debate where Biden does look feeble and potentially like he may have be in cognitive decline. And here's an
Mm.
assassination attempt of Trump when, repeatedly, the media sort of painted him as a sort of Hitler-like figure. So
Hmm.
I guess, certainly I think the assassination people were going off on, your CNNs, your MSNBCs, your whatever.
Hmm. Yeah,
So
I got you.
Well, I'm less certain about the assassination attempt stuff. Some, still we'll see how
Yep.
we'll see more info about that as it comes along. But I want to go back on the Biden and age thing in the media. Like, so I was flying when the debate happened, so I didn't have anything else to do but watch it and then watch the coverage afterwards. And like your CNN and your MSNBC, I mean, they had a bunch
What
of people. What?
I was gonna say, what do you mean you're flying? You have nothing to watch. You can watch a movie.
They're all boring on the planes. They like I watched the coverage after, and these mainstream media channels that are supposedly liberal bias were had people constantly bringing it up. They were like replaying clips and like talking about it and being like, "Holy shit!" Like that, that started really bad. That wasn't great. At least like at that point, they were definitely addressing it. So this whole
Yeah.
like the media's hiding it does
yeah,
comes off a little bullshit to me. You could say, well, they know beforehand and like hide the fact. I don't know. Did they have any secret meetings with him that we didn't get to see as the public, and then they just like trashed the video because he looked bad? I kind of doubt it. I think no one knew. The last time, I just don't think no one knew. And once it came up and was like, hey, this is actually a thing now, it's got discussed. People have been saying it, Biden's too old and feeble since long before he won the 2020 election. But again,
Hmm.
at that time, he did a debate and he did fine. Like he wasn't
Hmm.
Obama level, speaking, but he's never been like that, right?
Hmm.
So
mhm,
he's never been like an amazing public speaker, but he was perfectly competent and energetic in the 2020 debates.
Hmm.
So it's kind of so people laughed it off because it was worthy of being laughed off. But now I would say the situation has changed.
Mm. Yeah.
but
All right.
All
Sounds
right.
good. That's a wrap on the politics.
Till next time. We'll see what
Yeah.
exciting event has happened by then.
All right.
Okay. So we are going to talk. I'm going to talk about game theory, but really specifically, I'm going to talk about the prisoner's dilemma and what that can teach us about life and cooperation. Now, there is a
Mm.
book that I have called The Evolution of Cooperation by Robert Axelrod,
Mm.
which I've skimmed through some. So a lot of this would be in that book if you want a book. But honestly, what introduced me to this topic and what I'm mostly going to reference is a Veritasium YouTube video. This is a science channel that did a
Okay.
really good episode discussing this, and I thought it was a really interesting idea. So y'all are familiar with the prisoner's dilemma, but let's break it down just for any of our many listeners who may not know. The prisoner's dilemma is this concept is there's two prisoners are captured, and they have two choices, right? They can either try to cooperate, and the prisoners are captured and they're being interviewed separately. Like, they got the cops or whatever got them in two different rooms and they're trying to negotiate with them, right? So you can either cooperate, which is where neither of them sort of rats on the other guy, or they can defect and give the cops what they want, try to get the plea deal or whatever. That's sort of the stage of it. But cooperate, defect are the two strategies, and they get a reward based on what they do and what the other person does. So if they both cooperate with each other, they get 3-3 reward. So we'll say that's average kind of medium reward. If they cooperate, if they cooperate and the other guy defects, they get nothing, and the other guy gets 5. and vice versa. If they defect and the other person cooperates, they get 5, the other guy gets nothing. So you have this advantage where if you sort of rat out the other guy, backstab them, you get a lot of benefit. Now, if they both defect, they get 1 and 1 reward. So they just get like a little bit, but they mostly lose. So this seems like, kind of a weird numbers, but I think the intuition behind the basic idea, you know, whether you cooperate or defect is there for kind of, hopefully it makes sense as like a situation, right?
Mm-hmm.
The key thing here to notice is that regardless of what the other person does, defecting is your better choice as sort of a rational self-agent, right? Because if the other
Mm-hmm.
person cooperates and you defect, you get a bunch of points, you come out ahead, they get nothing. If the other person defects and you defect, you get at least a little something instead of nothing, right? Because you
Mm-hmm.
still at least decided to, work with the police. So there's this weird situation where, well, you say a rational self-interested agent should always defect, right? If you just look at the two cases. When you play the game repeatedly, though, so that is the best thing you can do, quote unquote, on one game. But when you play the game repeatedly, if you use this logic, each person will get 1 point, right? If they both keep defecting, they'll each get 1 point every time. And if your goal in the game is to get the most points, if you were both cooperating, you'd get 3 points. So you'd get more value from cooperating together. Yet for any individual instance of the game, defecting gives you more points. So there's this weird situation that comes up. And this game has been like sort of studied and applied to basically a ton of stuff, evolution and biological systems, human relationships and psychology, political systems, conflicts between nations. And it's this concept of this sort of
Nuclear wars.
nuclear wars. Yeah, this concept of I guess I'll say non-zero sum situation, I think is really key here, where potentially cooperating can potentially give you benefits, um, even if, you're acting in your self-interest. So that was a little bit rambly, but was that clear enough? Do we think we have the basic stage? There's this game,
Yep.
you have your choices, there's this thing. So
I do have one question. Like you say, if you play the game one time, the optimal choice, like optimal decision is to defect, right? Optimal action. Now if you repeat the game, then if you keep playing the game repeatedly, then is the optimal action is to cooperate, right? Now, are you mute? No.
no.
So what happens? Like in a repeated game, what happens is the difference between finite game and infinite game. So if you play the game repeatedly infinitely, of course, the solution is to the optimal action is to cooperate all the time. But what about if you only play in the game finitely? Like it's not you don't play it once, but you play like maybe 100 times. Like is there a difference between the action, the optimal decision for finite as infinite games?
there can be, because so this is going to dive into some details, but there can be, because there is I guess there's kind of a situation that comes up. So let's say you have your two agents have figured out that, like, if we just keep cooperating, we do better than if we start defecting on each other, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have to do this repeatedly. If if we defect and then start defecting back and forth, we're going to just come out worse. You could say, okay, we're going to cooperate, but the very last round, at that point, there is no more future games, right? So you could
Mm-hmm.
say, well, I might as well defect because I'll get more points. I'll do better if I defect on this last round.
Mm-hmm.
But this, by sort of inductive logic, you'd say, well, the other person's going to also is a rational, self-interested agent. So they have that same idea, right? So if they're going to defect on the last round anyway, I might as well defect on the second to last round,
Mm-hmm.
because they're not going to be cooperating regardless. So I'll get my points from them ahead of time. But then you can just sort of take that same logic and run it backwards, right? You kind
Yeah.
of end in this weird paradox. It helps, I think, in realistic situations.
Mm-hmm.
Generally, you're not aware that this is the last time you interact. So I think that's one part of the game that I think is less realistic. I think this game has a surprising amount of application to real life stuff, even though it's very simplified. sort of a known finite stop point is not really realistic. Usually there
Mm,
will be continuous actions, or at least the possibility, right? Even if you're leaving your job, you may want to not even if you already have a next job, right? You never know when those contacts might be useful, right? So trying to finish your stuff up good and wrap things up cleanly rather than just being like fucking off,
mm.
could benefit you down the road, right? That's a very simple analogy, but you never really know. But that is an interesting point.
So another another question is you mentioned like you are making the assumption the agent participate in the games are rational thinking agents. What if that assumption is not correct? Like, does it affect the games like, or does it only affect the one-time game? It doesn't affect maybe the infinite game.
That I know that can be. That can be an effect, right? So if agents, when you get into sort of the math of game theory, right, you usually are trying to assume that they're rational, they're going to do whatever is best in their own self-interest, but humans don't always act that way. Sometimes they sort of get emotional and will sort of, um, you know, I guess be willing to take harm to sort of get the other guy.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe that's like a longer term evolutionary strategy that, sort of encourages future cooperation because like, oh, people will irrationally harm themselves to get you back. You know, does that discourage, think potential actions in the future? We're going to kind of get into that more.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But let's get into it. So, very specifically, the really interesting story that I wanted to share is they did a tournament for this game, right? So we can talk about the math and the theory, but they did a tournament where Robert Axelrod, who wrote this book I mentioned, he ran a tournament and he had a bunch of people submit a bunch of strategies to try to win this game, right? And what he did is like, you are going to play this Prisoner's Dilemma game for 200 rounds
Mm,
and try to get the most points, and you're going to play against everyone else's strategies in like a round robin tournament, and whoever gets the most points is the best strategy, right? So people did all sorts of elaborate strategies. Some were considered nasty where they started defecting right away. Some were nice, trying to start cooperating, but maybe they'll probe, right? They'll defect once or twice randomly to see what you're going to do, see if they can take advantage of you, different things like that, right? They ran it, did a bunch of runs, did a bunch of trials. The strategy that won was tit for tat. Tit for tat is very simple. You just cooperate the first round, and then you do whatever the opponent did the previous round after
mm-hmm.
that. So if they're cooperating, you cooperate. If they defect, then the next round you defect.
Mm-hmm.
So, but if they defected and you defected, they defected one round, you defect the next round, but they were cooperating, you go back to cooperating. No big deal.
Mm-hmm.
It's simple, it's relatively nice play, but it won. It was very robust. Things like, again, things that sort of defected initially, to try to gain an advantage would cause, other agents to not cooperate, and things would kind of cascade. Things that, weren't as forgiving. So if you defected once, they just were like, screw you, I'm defecting for the rest of the round. Those weren't as
Yeah.
advantageous too. People did lots of strategies, and it was the best. And they came, okay, go.
So
Question
what exactly in the game they were playing? Like, what is
is the
the
prisoner's dilemma. So they were
like?
doing
Yeah, but what's like? It does the game involve any kind of scenarios? Like, what are the prize they're getting? Like, what does
yeah,
defecting mean? What does cooperating mean? Like,
yeah.
what does
So
being helping each other mean? Right?
yeah. So in the game, some of this I am sort of generalizing to try sort of represent how it applies to broader things. The specific game they're playing is that exact prisoner's dilemma I kind of described, where there's points based on cooperate and defect. So what happens is both agents pick their decision to cooperate or defect for this round. And
Mm-hmm.
then based on what they chose, they get points. If they both defect, they get 1 and 1 each. If they both cooperate, they get 3 and 3 each. If one cooperates and one defects, the defector gets 5, the cooperator gets 0. So that's just one round. They make their decisions in secret, obviously. Based on what they decided, they get points. They figure out what the other person did, and then they play the next round. And
Is
then
this is this happening like in your lab or like what kind
yeah,
of
this was
game?
on software. They like when they made this tournament, they had people submit software to sort of like run their strategy.
Oh, okay.
And
Gotcha,
they just
gotcha.
ran the simulations, right? And so you get points add up over all these rounds, and your goal is not to win that game. This is important. Your goal is to have the most points at the end of the tournament. So
Hmm.
it doesn't matter. You're not trying to say I beat the other person specifically the most number of times, but just you're trying to accumulate the most points, right? So
Hmm.
end up the best off.
Okay, sounds good. I thought it's gonna is like maybe a turn into a game show or something. I
There
think that's
are
yeah,
there are game shows that have basically done the prisoner's dilemma,
yeah.
but that's not what this was. So
Gotcha.
so tit for tat one, they ran
Mm,
another. There was like 15 strategies in the first one. They published this result. It got a lot of, feedback and talk and press. So they ended up running another tournament. One thing they did in the second tournament is randomized how many trials there were. Because the
mm,
first time they had this, when the last round is coming. So they randomized it to try to make it you can't really know. And they got like 60 something strategies. And Robert Axelrod talks that, there was kind of two camps, he said. There were the people who are like, well, tit for tat was nice. That worked. Like, let's try to make a cooperative strategy that, works. And there are other people that were like, hey, the cooperative strategy worked. They're probably going to be, a lot of people are probably going to submit cooperative strategies. Let me try to be clever and come up with something that will like game those cooperative strategies for my own benefit, right? And I
mm-hmm,
think if you're, I feel like everyone in real life can think about how though there's people who are willing to, do uncooperative things to get themselves ahead, right? Like they'll stab you in the back to like get progress their own career, whatever, stuff like that, right? So there should be
mm-hmm,
intuitively, it makes sense that there might be some way to take advantage of strategies that are cooperative and nice. Um, Long story short, tit for tat won again the second tournament, and overwhelmingly, the cooperative strategies did better. And then the uncooperative strategies did worse. And they even did things like they did sort of ecological simulations where strategies were sort of in a world and they were, as they sort of played this game with nearby strategies. And based
mm-hmm,
on how well they did, the sort of population of strategies changed. So it's sort of like bad strategies die off, good strategies propagate and kind of spread. And once again, cooperative strategies in that same situation ended up doing better. So they ended up identifying four attributes,
mm-hmm,
four very simple attributes that kind of explain why tit for tat did so well at winning these games. And this is what I thought was a really interesting idea. So there's basically four things you want to do. You want to be nice, so not nasty. So you cooperate first. You don't randomly defect.
mm-hmm,
You want to be forgiving. You got to be willing to, if someone defects against you, does something wrong to you, you have to be willing to forgive them. If you don't forgive ever, you just get it very quickly get into situations where everyone sort of defects, everyone works against each other, and that's it,
mm-hmm,
right?
mm-hmm,
Be
mm-hmm,
Mhm.
retaliatory. You can't not do anything if someone defects against you. If someone defects against you and you don't do anything, the sort of nasty strategies, quote unquote, will be able to take advantage of you for their own gain.
mm-hmm,
And there will be nothing to stop them from just, continuing to
mm-hmm,
affect to taking your points. And the last point was be clear,
mm-hmm,
because there are some strategies that were more probabilistic. Oh, they might, if you defect, well, I'm going to defect to punish you back, but I might not do it that round. People had various like sort of
mm-hmm,
complex ideas, but that made it too hard to figure out what the strategy was actually doing.
mm-hmm,
So that sort of inhibited the ability for the strategies to sort of cooperate essentially. So you
mm-hmm,
want to be nice. If someone else is not nice to you back, you need to immediately retaliate very clearly, but then forgive them, right? And that
mm-hmm,
is what this sort of game theory tournament suggests is the optimal way to sort of, or the best way to sort of cooperate with people, right? So this is, they kind of showed that in this simplified game where agents are purely self-interested, right? Agents are just trying to benefit themselves. Cooperating with those other factors is like the best way to get ahead.
mm-hmm.
All right. I've talked a lot. So that's was the main story I wanted to mention. What do you think?
I think it's bullshit.
You think it's bullshit?
No, 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 no. What I think is no, no, no. I think what I actually want to say is so you all right now you all talking about is simulating games, software agents, and you also talk about you're assuming that it's purely self-interested agents, right? I think that assumption to me makes sense. That you kind of assuming the worst case scenario, right? Everybody's self-interest, purely self-interest, which sounds like a good assumption to me. But so far, an example you gave is pretty much all in like either in simulation or just in purely like the software agent. But how does this has this I guess right now it's just a theory, right? So how does it apply, or is that in the real world? Does the theory work in the real world, right? Do we have examples like that or something?
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, in biology, there's so many examples of organisms cooperating each other in what you could frame as a very similar thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you have one example is grooming, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
if you're an animal, grooming another animal takes energy, might take some water because animals often groom with their mouth, so they might lose saliva. And in the wild, like water can be very important. So you kind of lose this. It kind of gives you a cost, and grooming the other guy doesn't really benefit you at all, at least immediately, right? But there's kind of an assumption then, well,
Mm-hmm.
if why does it exist? Well, animals usually live in like these social animals live in packs together. And so you do something for them, they do something for you. There's a cooperation. You both end up better off. So, and that's within a species, right? Okay, that's the same species. They share the same sort of genetic pool. Maybe there's a lot of species that cooperate with each other, right? But there's also a lot of species that are cooperate with other species, right? There's
Mm-hmm.
these situations that evolve like grooming is honestly a big one, right? Like, hippos leave their mouth open and let birds pick stuff out of their teeth, and they don't eat the birds, even though they could, because the birds are helping them out. The birds actually help keep their mouths clean, right? And there's all sorts of various situations like this. Ants will guard aphids because aphids will produce what they call honeydew. It's like a sweet
Mm-hmm.
substance that they'll emit that the ants can eat, and the ants protect the aphids. There's a spider
Mm.
that protects frogs for the same reason, because the frogs will eat bugs that mess with the spider's eggs. So the spider guards the frogs in the nest. The frogs will live in the spider's nest and not eat the frogs. So there's all these situations that come up.
That's
Um,
interesting. I actually not aware that species will like different species will protect other species. That's cool.
Now, obviously, all these species behaviors, they're not sitting there thinking like,
Yeah, yeah,
is
yeah.
this my rational self-interested thing? These are strategies that evolved and are programmed into DNA, right? But
Mm-hmm.
it's the same concept. You have this situation where theoretically at least one of the other agents could defect for an immediate benefit,
Mm-hmm.
but there's more benefit from actually cooperating. And it's not just biology. I think it's pretty easy to start applying this sort of framework and thinking to a lot of political scenarios, especially like between countries.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and see, so you brought up nuclear war, the nukes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the US and the USSR for a while were building up really big stockpiles of nuclear weapons, right? They both had more nuclear weapons than they needed to destroy the whole planet. So that's arguably a situation where cooperation sort of failed, right? They would both be better off not wasting resources doing that. They spent an enormous amount of resources to build the nuclear weapons instead of, things that would directly benefit people. But they were sort of in this situation where they were sort of both kind of defecting, quote unquote, doing this suboptimal action. At some point in the 80s, we at least managed to make some progress, and both countries started disarming to a degree. Now, they both have nukes, right? But we
Mm-hmm.
started reducing our nuclear stockpile. And they did it sort of tit for tat in a sense, in that they did it little bits at a time. They
Mm-hmm.
would, reduce, disarm some nuclear weapons, dismantle them, and decommission them. And they would allow the other country to come verify that they did it. And then the next year they would do it again. And so slowly but surely they sort of started cooperating. And, just on a pure resource perspective, they were able to put a lot less resources into sort of maintaining this massive nuclear, armament.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think I'm sure there's other examples that could come up, but I think the key is that when you have non-zero sum games, right? So if you have a zero sum game, you can only benefit as much as the other person loses. This doesn't make sense at all. It doesn't matter. This doesn't apply. But if you have a non-zero sum game, and I think a lot of interactions in the world are non-zero sum, this is when this framework can kind of come into play. It was like your first quote, right? If you can make a bigger pie, then you can both win.
Yeah. Zero. So kind of zero sum game is kind of like a finite pie, just one pie, and then non-zero sum game that means you can make a bigger pie, increase the pie. Yeah.
And I think the concept of a zero sum game is I wish more people knew or thought about, because there's so many instances. You brought up the wealth tax earlier, right? This is a discussion I see a lot where people are like, the rich are only rich because they take from other people. Like, we need to
Yeah.
tax them to take our money back. They implicitly frame everything as a zero sum game. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, that's not how it works, right?
Mm-hmm.
Human society, first of all, we have more people than ever before. Population is still increasing, and yet the average amount of wealth is way higher than it used to be, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of wealth has been made. The pie has gotten a lot bigger in the last century, right? We are very
Mm-hmm.
clearly not in a zero sum game, and that makes a big difference about what policies you should pursue, right?
Yeah.
What is really going to help you out the most.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's one thing that I didn't learn from like Naval Ravikant. He talked about like you kind of need to choose the game you play, and one game is like status game, right? They're playing status game, which is very much like not. I think he was giving an example as in academia, but it might not be true. Like in academia, you want to publish, right? So you can be the best, or whatever in your field. You want a
Hmm.
status of being the eminent professor, right? So that is kind of in a way, it's kind of playing a status game, but I'm not sure if it's completely applied because some people actually contribute a lot to science. Like the creator of game theory, John von Neumann. I was hoping that you get into it, and then the person behind the theory, but maybe next time I will read a book on him.
That's
Um,
fair.
yeah.
There's definitely more to say. I just thought this, like, the sort of the simulation tournament and like the
Hmm.
results that came out of it, I thought it was really interesting, so I wanted to focus on that.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
there's, it's a big
Yeah,
theory.
another thing is like Fame, right? Like I think Fame is probably a maybe a zero sum game. I mean, like a status zero sum game, but I'm not sure. But what's your thoughts on everything Mike just say, Matt? I mean, Matt just say, Mike.
No, I mean, I'm trying because I had studied tit for tat at a pretty good depth, and I honestly am trying to remember when. It could have been in like a cognitive psychology class, and it could have been that like
Hmm.
we studied game. I mean, I know game theory comes up, in a lot of different settings, but I feel like humans very rare. Like was there a like I guess an approach to this that better mirrored humans? Because I feel like because I know this has been studied, like the prisoner's dilemma and repeated games has been studied like in many different settings, and I feel like a more human approach might be so tit for tat consistently wins, but like if we're trying to actually understand human behavior, I feel like I've heard of approaches where it's essentially like there's a like essentially a punishment, like basically you defect when they defect, you defect, they cooperate. Like there's essentially a punishment round, and then you both go to cooperating. Like
Hmm.
that, I guess that level of what's the word I want to say here? Like,
So
Retaliation.
eye for
yeah,
eye.
like the retaliation, yeah, sort of a retaliation time can I think vary drastically between humans, and I think that's why like game theory sometimes isn't thought of as like a good mechanism by which human behavior is described.
Well, yeah, so I don't think game theory is not trying to describe how humans act, just trying to describe like what, the right actions are to take, right? Or figure out what happens. I'll
Mhm.
mention that in the examples I saw, tit for tat did win, but that it does kind of depend on what other people are doing. It's not that tit for tat is necessarily like the perfect, even in the simplified game, it's not the optimal solution, because the optimal solution is not, there's not one strategy that's perfect.
Right, right, right.
I mean, if you think about it, if you look at it, tit for tat in any individual game that it plays against another strategy, tit for tat can only lose or draw. It cannot win. And if you always defect, you can only win or draw. you can never lose the game. But
Right.
that's just one game, right? So if your goal is to build up points over many games, um, your benefits changes. But I guess going for human stuff, I don't know. I know they played a lot of them. They did ones where they added noise. So sometimes cooperation, even if you chose to cooperate randomly, it defect a little bit. And in that case, you needed to be a little more forgiving
Hmm.
than normal. You needed to occasionally not defect if they defected, because otherwise the random defections could cause like a cascade effect where you lose a lot of points. So I think there's a lot of, once you get into the details, there's a lot of like, you get into all the sort of the messiness of the real world, I guess.
Hmm.
You say what is exactly the best. It's going to change based on all the details, but I think the broad principles remain pretty consistent, it seems, across a lot of different variations. And it seems like to me, it seems like the broad principles apply to human interactions as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it does remind me of my advice from, I mean, Jim Collin. He's a very good very famous author on like books on what do you call it, like the good to great. Now he studied a lot of organizations, companies, and then one of them I heard his interview. One his advice that it's always good to when you meet someone new, just assume someone's good, trust first. Then if something, then it's a good policy basically as human interaction. And just it's actually kind of bad if you want to meet someone you don't trust them right away, right? If you have some kind of, it kind of impact your interaction. And how was you gonna say, what you gonna do if you always interact react to stranger with a suspicion, right?
Hmm.
Because most of the time the people you meet are probably good, right? So it's always good plus policy to trust first, even though maybe 1 out of 100 is like kind of a bad person, right? So yeah.
Mhm. Saying one more thing for Mike's sort
Hmm.
of human stuff. You mentioned specifically, would a human retaliate like multiple times?
Hmm.
Um, and I think you might be right. And I think what the answer might be is that might be what humans do, but that might not be the best strategy. And
Yeah.
it's not too hard to think of a conflict where there's sort of cycles of violence and fighting that continue, right? And instead of, someone retaliating and, an event, a retaliation, things resolve. There's definitely events, I'm sure you can think of some where they keep retaliating back and forth consistently for long periods of time, which obviously ends up being a net harm to both sides, right?
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, so I think that it is reasonable to say that maybe humans can be not forgiving enough for, sort of optimal benefit, and probably history kind of shows when that hurts us.
Right. Right. As opposed to like, I mean, I think honestly, like probably a lot of conflicts could be like, okay, like person defects, like you you cooperate, all right, you got fucked over twice. Like if you cooperate once more, maybe they cooperate that time, and then it's just cooperation as opposed to like they defect, you defect, they defect, you defect, they cooperate and you defect, and then they just are like, like they're never gonna cooperate as opposed to like trying it once more. So
Hmm. Yeah. I'll say one last point and I'll shut up because I've talked a lot for this podcast. But there's like the very obvious, I guess, interpretation of like, even if you have self-interested agents, like in situations like this, cooperation is beneficial. So this is sort of how it can evolve and come about. Like that's interesting. But I think there's also the side of like some people are, very peaceful, very cooperative. They want to be, I guess, too nice, basically.
mhm.
Pacifists who would say we should, not invest nearly as much in our military because, building weapons is leads to war, right? That's an idea some people sort of present. But there's also kind of along with the, from the self-interest side, I think it also says like, yes, cooperating is good, but the retaliation is really important too, right? You're
Hmm.
being nice, but retaliatory. Like this argues that what this idea suggests, what these tournaments suggests, is the way to get to cooperation is being willing and able to retaliate immediately. if someone tries to, defect on you, do something to harm you. And I don't know. That's very interesting with stuff like I mean, this is basically a debate people have with Ukraine and Russia, right? Because there are some people who are like, they're not, Ukraine's not in NATO, whatever, we should just leave them. It's not our problem, quote unquote. And then other people are like, is this going to be the last time Russia, tries to invade some area of land? Is this Russia going to be the last country that tries to take over some of its neighbors for, conquest? Like, does it make more sense to sort of retaliate? Will retaliating militarily lead to more peace long term, or will being a pacifist lead to more fighting and war because people are going to take advantage of it?
Hmm. Yeah, and from Russia's perspective, actually, it was no is the key point is the NATO is Ukraine tried to join NATO, right? That was the reason that Russian tried to invade Ukraine. I mean, from their perspective too, right? Their game theory thinking, okay, if Ukraine join NATO, that means other country, like Poland or other country, going to try to join NATO too. So it's going to be very dangerous for them as well. So
Well,
that's what I
I, w-
heard.
I would say that's what their propaganda put out. I mean, Ukraine wasn't on the track to join NATO at all when Russia invaded.
I
And,
think that,
th-
yeah.
and since Russia invaded, we have had new countries join NATO because more countries are interested. As a
Mm,
as a counter NATO strategy, what Russia did is really, really bad. What I heard, I saw someone put a pretty convincing theory that um, Ukraine was starting to get Ukraine has a lot of oils, and
mm,
they were starting to get foreign investment to sort of extract and use those oils. And
mm,
Russia's economy is very dependent on their oil and fossil fuels. You could almost call them a petrostate. So what I heard was basically they're like this is going to undermine our, economic advantages a lot. And instead of sort of investing and diversifying their economy, they're like, we will just invade Ukraine and keep it from being able to extract its natural resources. So
got you. Anyway, yeah, I don't know anything about those geopolitics stuff. I don't really study them, so
fair
don't
enough.
believe everything I say. Or my opinions. I had no opinions actually. So, go back to your game theory. You were in the beginning, in the preamble, you were promising some real world lessons that you can draw from studying game theory. So, what are the lessons that we can take away and apply to real life?
Uh, be nice, be forgiving, be retaliatory, and be clear. No, I would say,
Yeah, no, those are four. Actually, I like those four a lot. Actually, it actually makes sense. Like TikTok, TikTok. Yeah, actually, I think that's what most people do. Actually, anyway, all right, naturally do.
yeah. I think it is close, and I think it's one of those things if you're maybe, aware of it and thinking about
Mm.
it, like you can avoid, maybe it will help you make the right decision. I would wrap those four things up as try your best to cooperate, but also be ready to retaliate if needed, right? Like,
So, only thing I take away is two words: be selfish. Does it make sense? I mean, does it does it summarize the whole game theory? No, I'll kind of just be selfish.
perhaps. I mean, another way of talking about rational, self-interested agents is calling them selfish, right? The idea is
Yeah.
they are agents that are doing what is best for them,
Hmm.
not for others.
Hmm.
So what I would just say is it's good when systems are set up such that selfish individuals benefit the group, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, because yeah, in the end, economy, in the whole world, in the world economy, like what makes economy work is because everybody's selfish, and actually, and when you and if everybody act in your self-interest, actually, in the end, you have a cooperation, society, cooperative society
Hmm.
in a way. It's kind of interesting. Okay, I have a, I think I have another point, but and it's my probably it's in the afternoon, so my brain is not working, functioning well. So I think I kind of lost my point. Or could be I'm in a cognitive decline as well.
It's rough. You get into that age, too.
I am. Uh, all right. Anything else?
Nah, not for me.
Okay. Yeah, at some point I probably gonna need to study von Neumann because I think the theory came about in the 1930s or 40s during the time of like World War, like when the nuclear bomb was being made. And I think John von Neumann he actually was part of the Manhattan Project and stuff. So he worked on the nuclear bomb stuff as well. So actually during his when he died pretty early, but when he was dying, actually, there's a lot of secret like someone was like guarding outside his hospital, just make sure he doesn't say anything that is like secret, like the government. So yeah,
Mhm.
he was just very super smart guy, so it's worth study. So and then yeah, you guys know him, right?
Yeah.
Anyway,
Well, I
yeah,
know of him. I don't know a lot of details about his life, but I'm familiar
yeah,
with the name.
yeah.
So is that our next topic, or Mike, are you gonna have something for us? We're now on to next time's preview.
Yes.
Yes, I don't know. May maybe I'll come up with something, but we could do that next time.
All right.
All
So
right.
today's outro, well, here's the end. We reached the end. And the end quote for today is more is missed by not looking than not knowing. End quote by Thomas McCrae. Apparently it's a middle school axiom. So food for thought. So
So, look.
yeah, look. Yeah. All right. That's it then for this time.
All right.
Meeting adjourned.